It is such a privilege to be here with you today. My name is Luiza Dreasher, and I am an Assistant Dean and Director of Multicultural and International Inclusion at Mitchell Hamlin School of Law in St. Paul. I want to start by having you imagine, you're a couple of years from now, and you are a lawyer, and you were appointed to defend a father who was being accused of neglect. He was trying to discipline his child, and his way of doing it was by having the child kneel on rice. And you may be wondering, what does cultural competence have to do with this issue? The law is the law, and being culturally competent or not, the legal outcome of the case should not change, right? I want you to hold on to that thought because I will come back to that. Cultural competence is not, it has nothing to do with the law, truth be told. It's not part of any statute, has no relevance to the law per se. However, it has everything to do with how legal services are delivered and how effective you can be as a lawyer, especially when working across differences. Here are some reasons why you need to be ready to work effectively across differences. Let me see, am I on the right way? Cultural competence is a set of skills that allows you to work with people who are different than you are. It means, basically, because cultural competence tends to be seen as this esoteric concept, but that means that you need to be aware that differences exist and need to know what those differences are, and you need to have the skills to make adjustments so that you can work effectively across differences. It requires more than memorization of facts and characteristics. Usually people tend to give you, here's a list of things to do, that you need to know about Group A, Group B, Group C. It doesn't work that way. Because this, in fact, is a very dangerous proposition, because you may assume that these characteristics apply to everyone in the group, and it leads to stereotyping. Lumping any group together under common beliefs, values, and characteristics ignores the reality that each individual is unique, and he or she may or may not share those traits with the group. So why is cultural competence an important skill set? What does it have to do with the law? Why do you need, it's important that you acquire these skills. Here's one reason why. As a lawyer, you will soon be practicing in a truly multicultural society with respect to this nation's racial and ethnic populations. The Census Bureau is already projecting that by 2050, the U.S. will be a majority-minority country. In fact, 4 states, Texas, California, Hawaii, and New Mexico, are already there. Immigration is also contributing to increased diversity in our society. In the 40s, about 70% of the immigrants who were coming to the United States were from Europe. Today, about 85% entering the United States are coming from Central and South America. In fact, the foreign-born population in the United States tripled in the past 4 decades. And currently it totals about 37 million, nearly 12% of the total population. So without cultural competence, you will lack the basic skills needed to fulfill your ethical obligation of competent representation of an increasingly diverse population. which is diverse, on many levels, not just race and ethnicity. You have to keep that in mind. We also need to think about class, religious orientation, sexual orientation, ability level, nationalities, and many other aspects. Cultural competence is relevant across all sectors of the legal profession. And because of increased globalization, many transactions and legal disputes are moving to a more global arena. A lawyer today may undertake work on what seems initially to be a fairly routine business. For example, personal injury, a domestic relations matter, only to discover that it contains a foreign or international component he or she may not have initially anticipated. In the study after the JD, a longitudinal study of law graduates, about 44% of the lawyers who participated in the study indicated that they had been engaged in at least some work that had an international aspect to it. More so, clients actually expect or even demand the lawyers who are culturally competent and linguistically proficient. So what do culturally competent lawyers know and do? For starters, if you demonstrate that this is a skill set you have, particularly in this increasingly diverse society and global economy, recruiters will consider you a great asset. You will be highly coveted because this is the skill set that will give you the ability to communicate, negotiate, advocate, and effectively in an increasingly multicultural society. Cultural competence gives you the ability to relate to diverse clients, better understand their needs, and find more appropriate solutions to their problems. A culturally competent lawyer will take into account different cultural perspectives and how they inform the client's behaviors and motivations. They are also able to make accurate attributions to the client's behavior. For example, if your client is not maintaining eye contact, do you read that as a sign of dishonesty or a sign of respect? If your client is nodding, does it mean he's agreeing with you or simply indicating, yes, I hear you, I heard you? If your client is unable to tell a linear, time-related story, do you characterize that client as someone who is going all over the place, perhaps uncooperative, perhaps lying, or simply someone who has a different thought process? More importantly, culturally competent lawyers have strong understanding of how their personal beliefs, their biases, their values, their stereotypes, their prejudices, their privileges affect their way of thinking, behaving, and functioning. They constantly ask themselves, can I identify the possible impact that cultural similarities and differences will have on the way I interact with my client? What opinions or images do I carry about individuals from my client's group, for example? Are they positive or negative? How did I acquire them? Was it through personal history, through a childhood memory, to media? What steps do I need to take so I can eliminate my biases towards certain groups? Because as it was said here before, we all have them. So when embarking on this self-exploratory journey, lawyers become more self-aware, which is an essential element in the understanding of others and to providing appropriate services. Culturally competent lawyers are aware that certain differences can cause legal decision makers to negatively judge a client. So cultural competence will give you the ability to mitigate that situation and bridge those differences. Finally, culturally competent lawyers know that cultural competence equates to cultural effectiveness. They know that without cultural competence, they cannot deliver services effectively, and as such, risk becoming part of a system of institutionalized discrimination that disproportionately harms certain groups, still to this day. So, given the increased demographic changes, as well as increased globalization, it is imperative that you graduate from law school with a skill set that will allow you to work successfully with individuals from different countries, different cultures, and different worldviews. You need to be prepared to work in an increasingly multicultural environment. In fact, you need to be ready to work effectively in an increasingly borderless profession. Law schools need to reassess what law students need to know to be effective advocates for diverse clients. In fact, law schools need to learn from their medical counterparts, because medical schools today require cross-cultural education for all future doctors. Likewise, law schools must incorporate cultural competence into the curricula and make it a required course, not just, for a few who are interested. The legal profession needs to start seeing that cultural competence is a skill that can be taught and learned. Now, why I stand here advocating that law schools teach you these skills, the onus is on you as well to develop these skills. How do you start? Research a particular culture. Find reliable written materials, books, or academic sources. Connect with a cultural informant from the community. Find a community leader who can serve as a liaison. Ask lots of questions. And another very important thing for you to do, study another language. Future lawyers will face increasing language challenges in their practice. You're going to be in situations where you have to work with interpreters, with translators. So data from the U.S. Census Bureau shows that nearly 20% of the U.S. population speaks a language other than English at home. In fact, this can open up a very, very exciting opportunities for you. The one of cross-border lawyering. I just returned from Japan a couple of days ago, where I was accompanying a group of law students who were there as part of the study abroad experience. And while there, we met with members of the Roppongi Bar Association, which serves as a networking organization for all foreign legal professions in Japan. And they were there because they knew Japanese. So rest assured that knowing another language will open up some exciting opportunities for you. So in closing, I want you to understand that cultural competence is more than a buzzword. It's a vital component of the legal practice and a necessary skill set for today's lawyers. It will help you be more effective, an advocate in an increasingly multicultural society and global economy. And when you're able to meet the needs of your clients, especially your diverse clients, it will elevate the quality and integrity of the profession. Now, quickly going back to the example I shared at the beginning. In the child neglect case, the final disposition was indeed a finding of neglect. The law is clear about that. While the legal outcome may not change, approaching the case with your cultural competence lenses on will impact the way you advocate for your client. Because we cannot minimize the harm done to the child. But it will be a difference. It will make a difference on how you see your client, and therefore how you advocate for your client. It's a difference between seeing your client as someone who is cruel or uncaring, or seeing your client with a bit more compassion because you know he's coming, where he's coming from, and you understand his cultural background. So it prevents you from demonizing him and will make you a more, effective advocate. Cultural competence is not easy. I would be lying to you if you read a book, you took a workshop, you would be fully culturally competent. That's not the case. Cultural competence takes daily persistent work on your part. So here's where I would like you to get started. You have to start somewhere. This is a great book, A Different Mirror, A History of Multicultural America. It's an incredible retelling of our nation's past. Recounts the history of the United States in the voice of non-Anglo peoples, Native Americans, African Americans, and so forth. Because these are all the groups who helped create this country's rich mosaic. And their stories, their histories are very important. Thank you very much.